Now that we've gone through some of the common pitfalls for goal setting, let's talk about how to actually set a good goal. So the first thing that we want to think about when setting a good goal is, what is the intent behind the goal? So as we've already discovered, there are different kinds of intents that will drive different levels of motivation. So if we go back to our drive matrix, we remember that there are desires, there are shoulds, there are duties, and there are values. And each of these different things will create sort of a different amount of motivation and will sustain motivation over different periods of time. Especially when it comes to things like duty or dharma. These are the kinds of things that if you act in accordance to your duty or your dharma, you'll actually be able to tolerate a lot of negativity or pay a high cost to accomplish something. Whereas when it comes to intents like wants or shoulds, these are things that may be wonderful to have, but at the end of the day, we're not willing to really pay a high cost for them. So for example, if I should get healthy for the sake of getting healthy, like that's a great goal to have. It's something that logically is a good idea. And yet I may not be able to do the things like resist eating unhealthy food, force myself to wake up early every day so that I can exercise. All of the costs that come with the goal are hard to pay if it's coming from a should. Whereas if I know that I have heart disease and if I want to stay long enough to, for example, walk my child down the aisle when they get married, those are the kinds of things that feel like a duty to me. They feel very important to me. They're also things that I care about. And so they're more likely to help me sort of wake up early on time and pay those kinds of costs. So anytime you're thinking about setting a goal, you should really think a little bit about, where is this goal coming from? What is the intent behind this goal? And if you find that this goal is born of something like a desire or should, can you do some amount of introspection or recalculation? How can you move the intent of that goal from one quadrant into a different quadrant? The second thing that we want to be super careful about when setting goals is sort of setting a goal that is both measurable and actionable. This is kind of tricky, but when we think about goals, we oftentimes will think about something abstract. Like we'll say to ourselves, I want to retire early, or I want to become independent, or I want to find purpose in life. But how do you do that? Let's even look at the syntax of it, the grammar of it, the actual words of it. Can you find purpose? Is purpose something that is laying out there for you to just wander around until you find it? What does it mean to find purpose? How do you know when you found purpose? Can you even measure what percentage of purpose you found? Have you found all of your purpose, or half of your purpose, or a quarter of your purpose? No, of course not. It's absolutely absurd. And what does it mean to retire early? Are we talking about 40 or 50 or 55 or 25? Are we talking about retiring at the age of 15? What does it mean to retire early? So our goals need to be actionable and measurable. So this is where what we want to do is reframe goals to actions. So we can't get in shape. It is not literally something you can do. You don't get into a shape. What you can do is exercise. So I can do 10 push-ups every day. I can spend 30 minutes exercising at the gym. I can walk for 2 miles a day. These are all things that are actionable and measurable. So what we want to do is make sure that our goals can be transformed from things that are sort of abstract to things that are concrete and measurable. And the last thing that we want to consider when setting a goal is that oftentimes our goals are very, very ambitious. So we'll think a little bit about, what we want to achieve, or even we'll sort of think about what we need to achieve. We'll set goals for ourselves that kind of feel far away, oftentimes born out of necessity. I'll see this a lot, especially with parents who are struggling with kids who have video game addiction. So parents will come to me and they'll say, my child is so addicted to games, so addicted to games, so addicted to games. And so they'll say, I'll ask them, okay, so what are you looking for here? What's the goal? And they'll say something that sort of makes sense. I need my kid to never play another video game because their video games have destroyed their life so much, torn apart their relationship. They're really worried about their child's future. Sometimes parents will have these kinds of thoughts like, right now my kid is like sort of okay because they're living at home and sort of I cook and clean for them, but what's going to happen to my child once I'm no longer here? They'll be sort of terrified about these things. And so the goals that they set are almost born out of necessity. The challenge is that even if you set a goal out of necessity, we may be opening ourselves up to the pitfalls from goals. So if a goal is very, very far away, it can be really hard to measure progress or really feel like you're succeeding. So the other feature about picking actionable goals is we want to make sure that the action is fundamentally within our control. Sometimes, without even realizing it, we set goals for ourselves that actually depend on other people. So if I pick a goal like finding a boyfriend or finding a girlfriend or getting promoted, fundamentally, I can't necessarily find a boyfriend or girlfriend. That actually involves another person and another person's choice. Getting promoted may have a lot to do with things that have nothing to do with me. Ultimately, whether I get promoted or not is my boss's decision. And so we have to be super careful about the goals that we set, because sometimes those goals are born of desires, but they're fundamentally not in our control. And what happens to you if you set a goal that you're actually not responsible for? What you're sort of doing is dooming yourself to potential failure. And so even in that kind of situation, think about like what that's like. If I strive for promotion or I want a promotion, and then I set a goal for myself for that promotion, but I don't actually control it. And if someone else ends up getting promoted, what does that do for my motivation afterward? I may have done everything right. I may have gone to work early every day, worked really hard, asked for feedback, implemented feedback, and even increased my productivity by 20%. I may have actually knocked it out of the park and have a lot that I can be proud of, but I didn't get the promotion. And so what does that reinforce in terms of what I'm going to do going forward? When you do all of that hard work and you genuinely have a lot to be proud of, but you don't actually meet your goal because it's in someone else's hands, what does that do for your motivation next time around? It absolutely tanks it. So when you're determining a goal, make sure that not only is it actionable, but that the goal is solely dependent on you. It's something that you can control so that it can be positively reinforced. So what are the features of a good goal? Let's start with the 25% rule. So start with where you are. So let's say my goal is to do 50 push-ups a day. Think a little bit about how many push-ups can I do now? If I can do 0 push-ups now, and I want to be able to do 50 push-ups a day, where's a reasonable first start? So we want to cut that to 25 and cut that to 12.5. So if we want to build up to 12.5 push-ups a day, can we do that over the course of maybe a week or two? That seems pretty doable, right? So we're going to start by doing 2 push-ups today. We'll do 4 tomorrow, 6 the next day, 8, 10, and 12. So that's sort of how the 25% rule can really help you set up a goal that is attainable. The next thing to consider is, even if we look at that last goal is both actionable and measurable. The goal wasn't get stronger or get in shape. It's a particular action you can take. You can absolutely do 2 push-ups a day or not do 2 push-ups a day. It's a verb, and so we want our goals to be verbs that we can actually do. The next thing that we want to keep in mind is that goals should be measurable. So we don't want vague things like retire early or get in shape, right? So we should be able to measure how many push-ups am I able to do? How many calories should I eat today? The last thing to consider, or arguably the first thing to consider, is what is the intent behind the goal? Because at the end of the day, you can sort of structure a goal in the right way. You can use the 25% rule. You can make it actionable and measurable, but why are you doing it? So if your parent wants you to be a master violinist and you're doing it to make them happy, you can even make the sort of measurable goal of, okay, we're going to practice violin for 3 hours a day, and we're going to cut that in half, and we're going to cut that in half again. So we're going to practice violin for 45 minutes a day. Even that is going to be very, very difficult if you don't actually care about playing the violin. So you can have all kinds of goals in your life that have been conditioned into you. Society can tell you to wear a particular thing or look a particular way. Your parents can pressure you to get married by a particular age or have a certain number of kids. There are all kinds of goals that get populated in our mind that come from all sorts of places outside of us. At the end of the day, if you really want to accomplish what you put your mind to, it's very, very important that it's your mind that's setting the target. It's very important that you care about this goal, that this goal is either part of your values or part of your duties or your obligations. And so hopefully this overview will help you think a little bit about how to set the right goal to set yourself up for actually achieving it.